We'll just continue where we left off from. Taaruvot. We're going to finish the Siman today. We'll review a little bit the Seifim, go on to Seif Yud, go over some of the concepts that we covered. Then when we come back after Yom Tovim, we'll go into the Sfek Sfeika, the various conditions that would render something that would qualify for a true Sfek Sfeika. And the reason why Sfek Sfeika is so important is apparently we're seeing now from the Siman that there are situations where it is only because of a Sfek Sfeika that something becomes mutter. In other words, a particular situation receives much more koach of a heter as a result of two Sfeikas. One suffix, of course, can be mutter if it's a suffix d'Rabbanan, or can be also if it's a suffix d'Oraisa. It's not strong enough. It's not always strong enough to give us an indication of what the likelihood that something is mutter versus, whether we should say it's usher. In other words, there's not necessarily more koach to say that it should be this or it should be that. That's what a suffix is. We are in doubt. And there are very interesting situations in the Gemara about a suffix that we would ordinarily say it's usher because it's a deraisa, but because there's a special pasuk that is materet, we say it's okay. And one of the examples is a mamzer. Only mamzer vadai also min Torah to get married. A suffix is not, and that's incredible. We think of all things a suffix mamzer. No, but we learn out that the Torah asared only a vadai mamzer. When there's an issue in the Torah or mamzer marrying, unless it's another mamzer like itself, or unless it's a ger, a gyoris. Those are the only two that mamzerim are allowed to marry. The children remain mamzerim. So you need a special drasha to allow a suffix of that case to be said, it's okay, it's acceptable, it's only a suffix. So there's a big machlokes, and maybe we'll get into that. As Ilan suggested, perhaps doing a whole chibur, and Sfek Sfeika, big machlokes rishonim, and how do we deal with suffix d'Oraisa and suffix d'Rabbanan as well? How do we deal with it? Is it always l'chumra? Is it l'chumra d'Oraisa, or is it really l'chumra d'Rabbanan? In other words, and all the various details that come out of this important topic. So it's quite extensive, and as we indicated, the Shach goes into 36 specifications or qualifications that gives us an indication of when a suffix Sfeika is acceptable, let's say. All right, so with that in mind, perhaps we should just go a little over the concept, the musag of Sfek Sfeika, what it actually does. Sfek Sfeika, according to some, is very strong, much stronger than Roiv. According to others, Roiv is stronger than Sfek Sfeika. In other words, we do recognize different mechanisms for bittul. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about Taaruvot, we're talking about bittul, and there was all kinds of bittul, whether it was of the tam, of the bo'in, right, and how it works and where we learn it from. But when you're dealing with a Sfek Sfeika, how does that work? In other words, what is the mechanism for making it work? And it comes out, if you learn through the Aruch HaShulchan, who has a very extensive pirush on the Siman, and various actually good explanations for some of the kashas that there are on the Mechaber and on the Ramah, we'll go over some tonight. He says that it works as a roiv, very similar as a roiv. Every suffix diminishes the potential isser more and more. So it's not that you have two complete different sfeikas, it's that one slices the other one. It's not that one sits on top of the other, and they're two independent. That's a very important chiluk, because once you say there are two independent sfeikas, it could be a problem. It poses a problem for us in Siftes that if the two sfeikas are not exactly about the same thing, they're not acceptable. So the Aruch HaShulchan is careful in saying that they're really one of the same. It's just a double, and therefore a stronger suffix of the same kind. And the way it operates is By Rov, we say it is more and more likely that there's the problem that was potentially there is not there. So the way it works is the way Rov works. Rov is a statistical or probability, whatever you want to call, that tells us that the chances are that if this is okay or this is not okay, depending on what we're dealing with. So when you have a sfeika, you have an increase in that statistical probability, or whatever it is that we're talking about, but the chances are so minute, as we indicated on Tuesday, that it's such a dover kolush, nisu kolush, or potential for so slight that it would ever be a problem. The reason I give you this little bit of introduction is because there's a big shaila out there about why don't we fast Yom Kippur. Since Yom Kippur is coming, I thought that would be easy.
Yeah.
That I would mention.
I always feel like adding a day.
You do?
You
want to volunteer?
Yeah. So far, yes. I've always been...
There have been rabbis who have fasted 2 days, actually. Ever since Ezra, so far, we don't really have a suffix about when Yom Kippur comes out. Because we know what Elul is like. Elul will, for the most part, always be chaser, right? And therefore, as a result of that, we always will know when Yom Kippur is. The Yerushalmi gives a little bit of an explanation that the Chacham, nevertheless, even though they many times because of a suffix they would be stringent, and Yom Kippur they didn't want to be stringent because of a sakana. The rabbis tell us you can really fast for 7 days and nothing will happen to you. Up to 7 days you can be without food. Without food. No, without anything. Up to 7 days you can be. The human body can tolerate. Look at all the earthquake victims. Many of them were found even more than 7 days without anything. Obviously it depends on the conditions, the weather conditions, the temperature and so forth. So technically they say it can be without food for 7 days. So what do they mean by sakana? So the explanation is it's korov sakana. Potentially it can kill you. Potentially, the person too. Exactly. Potentially you can get into trouble. Potentially your system will become so weak that you won't be able to handle it. So the Chachamim therefore did not want to be so strict for a remote possibility. So there we see that there is a remote possibility. As it is known, Rav Meir is of the opinion that it's chayish limiuta, the Gemara says. Whenever you have a roiv, you have a miut. You have a small chance. Well, why shouldn't be concerned about a small possibility? So he does. He's concerned in certain cases about the small possibility of perhaps, the 1 in a 1,000 or whatever it is, will turn out to be, what we don't want it to be. And this is we're talking about many, many big halachas of Eishes Ish, married woman, agunas. What is the possibility that the husband may still surface? Many halachas are dependent here on a variety of assumptions. One assumption, for example, is that the woman will investigate and do her homework so as not to ruin her chances later. If he surfaces, she cannot marry the man she just wants to marry, that she's already married to, and her former husband. She's usher to both.
She has from the new husband.
Right. So we see that these chazakas, as they're called chazakas, it's much stronger an assumption. A chazaka is a real strong assumption. It's an established, what would we call it? In geometry, you have theorems, and you have the ones that are axioms. Yeah, pretty much an axiom, almost like an axiom. That why would she do it any differently? Why would she fly? Why would she? So as a result of all these axioms, all these chazakas, all these rules, all these principles, we're able to allow for certain things that we would otherwise not allow. Remember when we spoke about Nemanas? That was a big shir. Nemanas by Goy, Mesiach Lefi Tumoy. Right? That we don't believe he doesn't qualify to be an aid, and here we're allowing it under certain circumstances. Another example which we'll talk about tonight too is Eid Echad Neman B'Yisurin, another important area that in the Chazal, that even though Eid Echad by himself is not strong enough, you generally need 2 witnesses. And of course, you have to be kosher witnesses. So where would we allow 1? But there are situations where 1 is allowed, and one of them is Isurim. It tells us this is kosher, this is treif, a mashgiach, right? As long as there's no cheskes isur that he is opposing, that he's going against, When you're dealing with a cheskas iser, something that's been usher all along, you run into trouble. Can 1/8 contradict something that up until now was usher? Up until now, something was usher. Can an 8 echad contradict it? 8 echad doesn't have that strength, doesn't have that koach, or does he? So this, of course, brings up all kinds of situations. Somebody went into a mikvah. Okay, he was tameh, he was unclean. He comes out, they measure the mikveh, and it doesn't have the 40 sa, the 200 gallons. He had a cheskat isur, or cheskat tameh, I should say, when he went in. So, in other words, now we have to base ourselves on what's now. Who's to say that before it was okay?
But the one that had a hazaka, okay.
Who says?
Until which?
Who says? Well, I'm not so sure, right? And the fact is that now it's missing the 40 se'ah. And so we say, well, he was tameh till now. Let it go back, dip into the water again. Because he started off as a cheskat tameh, right? You have an animal that was not kosher until it's slaughtered properly, right? Until you shecht it. That's the case that we have over here of an off, a chicken, that you found that the wing was broken. And there's a chance that because of a broken wing, there was a perforation in the re'ah, in the lung. Well, it's very important to know when that happened. Did it happen before it was slaughtered, it was broken, or did it happen after it was slaughtered, it was thrown on the pile? Right? So that's why the Ramah tells us over here in that particular case, afilu hayalo cheskat isur kigon of shebecheskat isur omed, before it's shechted, because it's not kosher before you shechted, so it's called the cheskat isur. Nonetheless, over there we permit it. Why? Because we have a sfex feka. Sfex feka over there to tell us whether it's okay or not. What was the sfex feka by off? Well, when was it broken? And even if you say it was broken while it was alive, did it really perforate? Why don't you check it out, we said. So you don't have to. The chachamim lo yitrichu oto. Like in certain cases, this is not the only case, by the way. There are other cases where lo yitrichu. They did not ask the person to bother to investigate, which is very interesting because there are examples in Halacha, I think in Halacha Refot or elsewhere in Yore Deah, where something that is possible to find out, you find out. Something that you can look up, something that you can check. And we briefly spoke about the Isur Chadash and Chutz La'aretz, where today you can check to see from the new crop or from the old crop. Look at the date in the bag. And that's what they were saying. It's possible, liverure, if it's possible, levarer, to find out. Maybe we cannot rely anymore on the sfex feka that we have. In Isur Chadash, remember, we have a sfex feka in Chutz La'aretz, the Ramah says. That's what we can eat from most breads, because safek. We have safek this, safek that. We have a sfex feka. So,
question
yeah.
on the bag.
Yeah.
The date on the bag is a date that says when it was ground.
I don't recall,
Yeah.
to tell you the truth. I don't
Make a
remember. I don't
difference.
really recall, but I believe that it's from the time that they brought it into the factory over the time it was
Harvest.
it was processed.
Otherwise
Yeah,
the date would mean it.
right. Processed, which is within a few days of the time that it was harvested. Maybe.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it could be another type of date, but it's very close to the time of harvest. It's not the date of ground. I don't think so. But you know what? Since everybody likes fresh, it could be grounding and harvest are also close to each other. So I'm not sure. Yeah. Okay, so let's just continue. So sfeka is a very powerful mechanism by which we can permit certain situations. And we're being introduced to that over here. The Mechaber is mentioning that something could be mutter because sfeka. The Ramah sometimes says not necessarily. And we need to understand what's going on here. Why do the two argue about some of the halachot here? So before we go on, what I want to do is go to one of the questions that the Shach has in the Mechaber and the Ramah, on both of them. And that was the last leaf that we covered on Tuesday. And that was a safek trefa. A safek trefa, well, that's good. It's only a safek trefa. We don't know for sure if it was treif. That got mixed up with others. So we said, the Mechaber says they're all asur, unless ad sheyeh b'heter kedei levatel ha'isur, im hu midvarim ha'mitbatlim, until you have enough in the heter to be mevatel the isur. Shekivan shesafek harishon haya begufo en le'atirom esfek sfeka. Here you don't allow sfek sfeka because the first safek is begufo. What does that mean? It's good to have clarity in this before we go into all the conditions of sfek sfeka. Safek begufo means if something is asur or something is mutter. The meat, the goof, the chicken, the cow, is it treif or is it kosher? That's safek begufo. As opposed to the second safek, which occurs betaruvot. So this one got mixed in taaruvot. Okay, I have a whole bunch of pieces. Which one is it? Is it this one or is it this one? So I have a safek begabe the taaruvot. Okay, begabe the mixture. So whenever you have two different kinds of sfekot, you cannot use it as sfek sfeka. One is in the guf and one is in the taaruvot.
I would like to really understand.
All right.
I have a problem understanding it. Just in front of me now of a pot.
Right.
I have a question on that piece of meat.
Right.
The question right now is
what's your question about that piece of meat?
My question about this piece of meat.
No, your real question is which piece of meat is it?
No.
Because you
No,
know...
my question on that meat is it
No,
kosher?
but in our situation, you know that a non-kosher piece of meat fell into
That
this.
motivates my question, but my question is, this meat that I have in front
Well,
of me,
obviously, that's...
is it kosher or
But
not?
that's the halachic, that's the halachic question.
Is
Yeah.
it kosher or not? That's my
Right.
question. Yeah.
Right.
If it's kosher, I could eat it. If it's not kosher, I can't eat it.
Right,
Okay, so I'm trying to determine is this piece not.
right.
Now, why would it be kosher? It came from those that were kosher.
Right.
It might not be kosher. It was the one that fell in that was not kosher.
Correct.
And if it's the one that fell in that was not kosher, was that for sure not?
Exactly.
Might have been that one was kosher. So it seems to me, as I'm looking at it, I'm still
Right.
looking at this meat in front of me.
Right.
It seems to me that both of my questions are on the gufo.
Yeah, if you
Because
phrase,
my question- my
you're
first
phrasing
question-
because of the way you're phrasing the question. Is it, can I eat it or not?
So is it because of the way I'm phrasing,
Right.
or because of the way that they're phrasing it? Is it a question of phrasing, or is it a
Well,
different question?
the way you phrase it, it is very easy. In other words, it's all one thing. Can I eat it or not? You know, was
Well,
it
no,
kosher
not
or
can
not?
I eat it. What is the status of this meat?
Right, yeah. But here we have two independent sfekot, and not only are they independent to make it easier to understand, the two sfekot occur at different times. As we said on Tuesday, that's another important chiluk that we see here towards the end of Siman Kufyud, that there appears to be a difference on whether the sfekot noldu b'sha'a achad bevat achad at the same time, or that the sfekot occur at separate times. Now, it's okay for sfekot to be at separate times when we're talking about two taaruvot. It fell into one pot, then some of that one pot fell into a second pot. That's okay. I think the Shach explains that when you have two taaruvot, you can assume that they're happening at separate times. But they're both taaruvot, so we don't have a question anymore about the name of the safek. It's all the same name. It's all taaruvot. Just that they didn't happen at the same time. But that's okay, because that's the way it occurs in taaruvot. But in other situations, you may have instances where they're not at the same time, and because they're not at the same time, they help us understand that they're not of the same name either. Is in the case of, as in our case, where one is in the guf, a question arises whether this is a kosher animal or a non-kosher animal. And then later on something happened. It fell into taaruvot, and now we have a separate question that is not related to the first question. Okay?
So
Yeah.
let's
So therefore, in your case, somehow theoretically, had it happened at the same time, it could be that it would be acceptable as a sfek sfeika. Yeah. It could be. I think I remember seeing something about this, but because we haven't had the time to really deeply go into all the details of sfek sfeika, I'm not sure. So I don't want to...
I was in the meantime trying to understand
Right.
your response.
Yeah,
And maybe I'm wondering whether this is what you meant.
yeah,
Maybe one can say, if this piece of meat is forbidden, it's
Right.
non-kosher. It's non-kosher for the same reason it was non-kosher on the first sveka. Through the Taaruvos, we don't have now
Yeah.
a new source of Isser coming to the gate.
No, I mean, it's kasher or tarif.
So,
I mean,
so,
yeah.
if it's
Yeah.
Asr, it's Asr for the exact same reason it was Asr before.
Right.
So therefore, the Taaruvos does not introduce new legufo. Because with respect to the gufo, it was the same Isser all along.
Yeah. Nevertheless, we still have to figure out, if this piece of meat is okay or not okay, right?
Sure.
We still have to figure that out.
Fine.
So we ask a question. What's the question? Which one is it? Is it the one that fell in, or is it not? So in other words, we are like talking to ourselves, or whatever, right?
Who are you?
So that's the suffix. That kind of a suffix in trying to determine which piece it is not the same suffix as whether the original piece that fell in was slaughtered properly or not.
That's what I meant when I said
Yeah.
it doesn't introduce Isser on the guf.
Right. Yeah, but anyway, that's the way they learned this. But we will see that there is a little bit of a difference, a minor difference, when it comes to kavua.
In other words, on the first suffix,
Yeah.
the suffix is because I'm not sure whether, let's say, the slaughterer who had sharpened the knife properly.
Right.
Let's assume that problem.
Right.
So I'm not sure if the slaughterer had sharpened the knife properly.
Right.
So then my second suffix has to also be something having with the sharpening of.
Yes.
Whereas
Similar. Yeah.
Whereas now that my second suffix is it this piece or that piece? So yes, I have a question with respect to the group, but what constitutes the source for this question has nothing to do with the source for the first question.
Yes.
And that's maybe why it doesn't work as a suffix.
Okay, you can say that.
It's
Sure.
it's a second suffix. The source is a completely different.
Yeah. But anyway, let's go on. So what does the Shach say here? The Shach says about this particular instance of where you have a safek trefa. It's a safek trefa. Okay. What's the havamina? What is the mechaber trying to tell us over here? Is this a chiddush that is a safek trefa that got mixed in with others? You wouldn't have a safek sfeika here. Why would I think differently? Just because it's because it's a fake trefa? I mean, the mechaber himself requires whenever in certain isurim 3 taaruvot. 2 taaruvot is asar. Okay. Two mixtures would be asur. He requires in Seif Het 3 taruvot. No, it was not without kavua. Things that are not bottle, things that are choshuv. Okay, so listen carefully to this because you could learn it in 2 different ways. So the Shach says, why would the mechaber have to mention this anyway? According to him, you would need 3 taruvos. Like this is redundant in a sense. It doesn't. What's he's trying to be mechadash over here? And even according to the Ramah, the Shach says also that he gives a different explanation. He says Shesafik, right? The Ramah gives a completely different explanation than the Mechaber before. Actually, the Ramah in this seif, Yesh Omer Atam de also holu v'Safek hu isur doraita. Says, why say that for? We already know that from before. Why do we need this new halacha for? So here the Aruch HaShulchan explains very nicely. The sheet of the Mechaber is that when do you need 3 taruvot? When do you need 3? Because the Chachamim are the ones that required 3. There's never a situation that Midoraita you need 3. Midirabanan, yes. Because we're talking about Dvarim Chashuvim that are not Botel Afilu Be'elef. Came along the Rabbanan and said, you know what? Rov by itself is not sufficient. We do not allow Rov to be Mevatalit. But if you have 3, then you restore back the Koach of Rov.
So Rabbanan says decreed that after 3 taruvot.
Exactly. The same Rabbanan that said that something's not Batal Afilu Be'elef, certain things, are the ones that said Rov in this case is not enough. Right? Afilu Be'elef lo Batal. They're the ones that said, but if you have 3, it's okay. And we explained before that the way this works is because at some point in the middle, we are weakening the chashivut, the chashivas, of that davar roilis kabed or davar sheish lo matirin or whatever it is. We are weakening that chashivus that has by going stage after stage. We're diluting it. That's how we explain it.
But
yeah.
I think we don't know for sure that chashav piece fell in 3 times from 1 taruvah. The whole point is that
we don't know. Obviously, we don't know, but we have 3 taruvas, right?
We have 3 taruvas, and we don't know if that chashav piece fell from one pot into the other, and then from the other pot into the other.
So anyway, so the Aruch HaShulchan explains that since the first taruvas of the 3 is like a vadai yisur, you need 2 more to make a sfek sfeika, right?
Who's it like that?
The Aruch HaShulchan. Yeah, interesting, right? So he says since the first tawan is like a vadai yisur, it doesn't count. It's not bottle.
Anything that comes out of that pot is other.
Yeah. So you need 2 more to make it a sfeika. But here, the Aruch HaShulchan says, you know what the Mechaber mentions here? Here, you're starting off with a suffix treifa. Lechatchila. Therefore what? I would think, this is suffix treifa.
It's a pot.
It's like either the second pot, so maybe 1 more pot isn't sufficient. Comes along the Mechaber himself and says, but it won't help you. So Mechaber needs this halacha because I would think if you start off with a suffix treifa, this is not the real Isser. It's a suffix to begin with. Who says that the Chachamim would, require 3 here? He says, no. In this case, we won't allow it. You can't get away with it. Why? Because They're not of the same kind of stuff. Okay, fine. It's very interesting the way the Aruch HaShulchan just easily explains it.
We're still talking here about the davar chashuv.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it won't be.
But 1 second. Very good point. What you just said. The Ber Hatev says, simple. What you said, more or less. You know what the difference between here and Sif Ches is? What did we say in Sif Ches? Sif Ches, we need 3 Taaruvos, right? Here it's a completely different halacha of a Safek Treifa. He says that over there in Sif Ches, we're talking about a davar chashuv. Right. Here we're not talking about a davar chashuv. That's all he said. That's a difference. But that can make a difference sometimes. If it's not a davar chashuv, obviously, it's a completely different situation. All right. Anyway, next, let's go on to the next halacha, and then we'll.
You could put 6 over this.
Yes, you can.
Because really the question is, what does the speaker accomplish with respect to the category of davar chashuv?
Yeah. When we get into all the categories, maybe we'll spend more time on that. Let's just do the last seif. Re'ah trefan shenimtzet ben re'ot kshirot. Okay, you go to the slaughterhouse, you go to the butcher, you go to wherever all the re'ot are. When I read this halacha, I say to myself, look at these guys. They actually ate lungs, and today we can't eat lungs here in this country. The government here doesn't allow lungs. In Israel, however, you go to Israel now, you can have spleen, you can have lungs, you can have hearts, you can have all kinds of things.
And the thing is, your life expectancy is low.
But that's a different thing. And they smoke. So anyway, re'at refashin imtzed ben re'ot kshirot. So you find one lung that is taref. How do you know, by the way, that the lung is taref? You know that?
Because of the sources.
How do you know? How do you know? What?
You look at it. Oh, you blow it up. Or you look at it.
Yeah, you blow it up. You blow it up, and you see. Have you ever seen they blow up the tires?
I've seen it.
You know how to see it. So same thing with the re'ah. Yeah, but what gave it away? Why did this? How did they find out it was? How did they suspect it? What was the problem? They didn't just. Yeah. So listen. So re'at refashin imtzed ben re'ot kshirot. Ve'amar bodek. The bodek is the one that when you slice up the animal, open it up after you shecht it, he sticks his hand in to check the re'ot. He doesn't check the heart, doesn't check the brains, doesn't check any other part of the body, even though there may be trefot in those parts too, because statistically it is very rare that there should be a problem in the brain. But re'ot have problems. What are the problems in the re'ot? Sirchot, ligaments or attachments. So Amar Bodek Shaya Yore Deah sircha. He knew about this sircha, so this is how it came about. In other words, he knew about this re'ah having a sircha, so either you detect it, usually it's gone, because once they remove the re'ah, it's very difficult to tell unless you actually put it, like Hanania said, in the water, unless you actually blow it up and see. But either way, they were able to recall. The Bodek says, I remember this re'ah because of the sircha. And therefore I said it's not glat, or I said it's not good, it's treif. But so what happened? Now what's the problem over here? What's going on here? If there is a trefa, if there's a re'ah that's treif,
there was a whole animal.
There's a whole animal out there that may be the treif too, that's mixed in.
But if the lung is treif, then for sure there's an animal there. Right? I mean, if you have a lung treif.
Yeah, but if this re'ah is here amongst the kosher ones, it could be that non-kosher animal is amongst the kosher animals too.
We don't.
So here comes along the bodek and says, you know what, I know about this, I was aware of it, and the reason why this got mixed in here is bishgagani Taaruvot. It happened by accident. Somebody just put it there, and he shouldn't have.
But the animal, he's saying, was for sure.
Today, they put stamps, they separate, it's very organized, but mistakes happen. So here, what is the bodek telling us? Bodek wants us to trust him that the animals that are out there are fine. They're kosher. This re'ah that is not kosher got mixed in. But the sheep were okay. For some reason, over here. Okay. They wanted to have lamb chops. Akvasim mutarim. The sheep are mutar. Now, the reason actually why it's worded this way is because this came from a shuvat harosh. The rosh was this question. It actually happened. So that's why it's worded this way. It could have been any other animal. But anyway, hakvasim mutarim. The sheep are mutar. What's going on over here? In other words, don't think that he's lying. That's basically what the halacha is. He's telling us something that makes a big difference. That if this just by mistake got mixed in here, and he's the bodek.
We rely on him all day.
Exactly. So we rely on him all day long, but I would possibly think that maybe I shouldn't rely on him, because we found it. He didn't say, hey, wait a minute, hold on. We went ahead and found it first. Since he didn't say anything, now he's about to say, but wait a minute, yeah, I know you found it, but it got mixed in because I checked. So his checking, his saying that he checked is reliable. Because like you said, we rely on him on other things too. And this is the one of the examples of ed echad neman, bisurin, to tell us yes, no, when we have any doubts. Especially in the case here where they are shechted already, and there's no reason to assume that they're treif unless we actually discover a treif. If we don't discover an actual treif, there's no reason to assume that any of them are treif. So when he comes and is mevarer and clarifies to us the situation of how it happened, this got mixed up. It happened over here, it didn't happen over there. Those are still fine. We rely on him. So that's what's going on over here. So he's like an eidecha that's ne'eman b'yisurim.
So that is now the background story. How come we have a suffix treif? There's nothing to do.
No, nothing to do with it. Okay, it's just telling us that even though there is a suffix over here, and we may not trust him, it just came up, it just surfaced a problem towards the end. What we're saying, the chiddush here is, even though it's not such a big chiddush, it's still an important chiddush, that we rely on him. We rely on him to explain the situation that this is the way it was, and in reality, and it's not a suffix too by the animals right now. Because now you're in trouble if you have suffix by animals too, or which one is it? Yes, it's one of them, and it's all mixed, and the animals are mixed too. And what did we say about animals being mixed? Balechaim? Well, especially when they're alive. There's, here you could have a problem of birya in some situations. So obviously, in this case, we are able to rely on him. There's so many, you have no idea how many issues can come up. Imagine somebody slaughtered an animal. You know that every so often you have to check the chalaf, you have to check the knife for pegimot. He checks. Oh, he finds a nick. A nick? A nick. What now? Did this happen before or after? It makes a big difference. If it was there before, that means this animal could be treif. Akira, it's called akira, right? It's an nevela. It's not a treif, it's called a nevela. So that's why it's important to check by every animal if possible, especially by gasas, by cattle, not as much by chickens, because it could easily, from the hide, become pagum. And sometimes, if you go too far down in chopping the animal, you could have hit the bone, and that could have made a nick. So that is why, if you have a nick right after slaughtering the animal, you could be in trouble.
I'm wondering.
When did it happen? When did it happen? Now or before?
I'm wondering how you could.
Yeah.
Because
if you checked it before,
so before
and you found it now, then you know it's okay. Before you shecht it, you checked it.
But you don't know.
So it happened maybe later somehow.
There's a time distance?
It could have been, at some
because
time.
I thought he was checking it right after the slaughter.
Yeah, well, it could have been a little bit later.
But if he checked it right after the slaughter...
It could be a problem, sure. But they don't always, they usually check it right before they slaughter.
Right.
So now the question is, was it before, was it now? You have to be very careful where you put F2, that it shouldn't become scratched up or whatever. Anyway, so all these questions arise as a result of a suffix of timing, of when, and so on. And this could render an animal treif, pegima. All right, real quickly, just a few more details to cover here. The Premier Gadol, I think we mentioned this one, says that the Ri, who was of the opinion that sfex feika, if one is in the guf and the second one is in the Taaruvot, that's only with the Rabbanan. In the Torah, it's still considered sfex feika. So even though we're learning now from the Mechaber that they're two completely separate sfeikas, the Premier Gadol says that that's only with the Rabbanan. With the Raisa, in the end, you have a sfex feika. In the end, you have roiv. In the end, you have a majority, one way or another. So this is only a dim with the Rabbanan. And of course, we said that it will make a difference whether they occur at the same time or not. Okay, just going back a little bit to the halacha, and this still may require a little bit more birur. That's why I wanted to see the Badei Shulchan. I want to see a little bit more on this halacha that we covered last time of kavua that got mixed up with harubas. Right? We said something that is kavua, and kavua is kemertz hamertza, it's like 50%. We don't have roiv, even though the chanuya is selling kosher meat, one selling treif. So And the Chaber says in that case of kavua that it later on got mixed in, that it's okay. It's okay because of Sfek Sveika. Even though the first suffix is mechzel mechza, the Aruch HaShulchan explains, according to the Mechaber, who allows this taruvas, the reason why he allows it is because according to the Mechaber, guess what? The Aruch HaShulchan again comes to save the day. He says, according to the way the Mechaber learns that halacha of kavua is that they are both taruvas. It's not from two different shemos. The kavua case of chanuyas is a mixture of stores. And here it's falling into a taruva, so it's also a mixture. Even though we're machmir in the first mixture of kavua of saying it's 50-50, yes, it's a big chumrah. Nevertheless, once it falls into another taruvas, you have sfek sveika, and the second sveika increases it from mechza lemechza to roiv. You start off with mechza mechza, right? Kavua is 50-50 because it's a special din of kavua. But since the two cases, stores and taruvas, are taruvas, you can allow for sfek sveikas. That's, and again, the Aruch HaShulchan is drilling this point. I haven't seen anybody else explain it that way. He says the Mechaber is easy to understand. In other words, he's definitely, even though he's machmir later on by telling us don't allow two different kind of sveikas. Here he says it's sfek sveika. What's sfek sveika? Yes, because they're both taruvas of sorts. And therefore, even though the first one is mechzel mechza, the second one increases it from the mechzel mechza to a roiv. That's all. That's why it works according to the Mechaber.
What would be actually why the kavua, once it's found hot, mixed in with, I don't know which one is the kavua.
Right.
What would be the reason that it would not ruvus in roiv? Are we saying we don't have roiv?
That's what we're saying. Yeah, that's what we're saying, and this is what requires a little bit more beer. This is what I'm trying to find. If anybody speaks a little bit more about it. Apparently, what they're saying is that the first instant of kavua is like a vadai isur. And well, good, but not only is it like a vadai isur,
it's worse than a vadai isur.
It's worse in some ways. It's worse like a vadai isur because it's mechzel mechza, and that mechzel mechza continues to pose a problem even in the taruv. In other words, the taruvas does not diminish somehow. It does not have the strength to take it away. That's
the speak of the Aruch HaShulchan, because through the speak he made more than mechzel.
Right.
But if you're telling me that the kavua introduced the rule of mechza now into the pot into which it falls,
that's why
then it wouldn't help.
Right. I thought about the same thing. I thought of it too. That's why the Ramah has to learn that the reason why it doesn't work is because they happen also to be of two different shem, two different names, different kinds of. So that's why the second one has no koyach to double up with the first one. Whereas if they would be, you would have it just a sfek sveika. Why sfek sveika should help? Why not sfek sveika? Here it doesn't work because you don't have it. Why don't you have it? Because there are two different kinds of sveika. And because the first one is a real isser, and it's mechzel mechza, the second one does not do anything to it. With the Mechaber, the way the Aruch HaShulchan says, he says, yes, they are the same name. The second one goes ahead and increases it from 50% to roiv.
So it seems like the big Shulchan and the Ramah, and normally the Shulchan is very, very respectful of the Ramah. Doesn't argue. But the Ram is willing to see the kavua as a mechza. Mechza is saying once it's a mechza, it's a complete isser because it's a kavua.
Right.
So you don't have any 50% isser here in front of you.
Yeah, but
it's 100%.
If you have a chance, see if he says anything about that. That's what I wanted to check out.
Maybe just scanning it and get you.
Now, why isn't this different than Sif Ches? Where it requires 3 taruvas over there, in other words, and here sfek sveika is sufficient, because as we explained before, in Siv Ches we have a situation of rov 2, but there the rov is a rov that the Rabbanan disallowed because it's a davar chashuv, which is interesting because you know what? By kavua, the Meforshim explain that kavua is even applicable to something which is not royally skabed. You bought a piece of meat that's not royal kabbalah, it's going to be aser. But pirish, shelo befonenu, right? The piece of meat came out of one of the stores, not in front of us. We would even be matir, even if it's royal kabbalah, because it has nothing to do royal kabbalah with pirish. Once you say pirish is mutter, it has nothing to do. Oh, but it's a piece that's royal kabbalah. Makes no difference. It's interesting. If it's kavua, even if it's not royal kabbalah, it's going to be aser. Once it's kavua. If it's pirish, in the pirish that we're matter. By the way, remember we spoke about pirish. Today pirish is not so applicable if you have a basar shenis alamin ayin problem. Where is this meat from? It's the meat I bought, but wait a minute, it doesn't look the same. Is it the same? Maybe it was replaced by goy. That's called Basar Shenisam Einayim. Why the Ramah is Mekel today? We're Mekel on Basar Shenisam Einayim. B'tvias Ein, B'siman, same packaging, right? If you have those kinds of situations that basically say this most likely is the same piece, and that's why Basar Shenisam Einayim is not a problem. But otherwise, Basar Shenisam Einayim overrides Pirish. Pirish, okay, it's Mutter Pirish. Called the Parish Meruba Parish, yeah, but it's Shenisam Einayim in the meantime. Maybe some animal brought it here, so replaced it. A goy replaced it. But who says it's the same meat? Who says so? Okay, so the majority are kosher, but maybe this piece of meat came now from somewhere else in the meantime. So Basar Shenisam Einayim is always going to be a problem, unless, of course, you have a Siman, a Tvias Ein. In other words, you can identify the packaging is the same, it has a Siman, whatever. Otherwise, you have that problem. So therefore, the difference between here, Siv Dal and Siv Ches, is the Siv Ches we're talking about a double chashuv. Double chashuv is the Rabbanan told us that the roiv doesn't help, but they told us that if you have 3, then it does help. That's the difference. So apparently here we're not necessarily dealing with a double chashuv.
When you said it has 3, it does help by a Pirish.
No, Pirish was a totally separate thing. I'm talking about Siv Ches, where we're talking about 3 taruvos. Right, 3 taruvos, right? 3 taruvos, yeah.
But 3 taruvos goes in the chashuv.
Right, so over there the Rabbanan did not want to matter, ma she'en ken bekavua. The kavua, as we explained, the Shach gives 2 terutzim, that according to the Mechaber, it's a chidosh kavua. So once it gets mixed in with taruvos, why not say it's mutter like any taruvos? As long as it's not a double chashuv, of course. But the Ramah has a problem with it because maybe it's not the exact same Isser. It's not, the exact same suffix. It's not the exact same name. And that's what he says, Yesh Isrin. Because the Isser is B'Mekoyma, makes it half-half. And since the suffix Arishan is also in the Torah, there's no other suffix. The Hapirak Taruvas.
So for him, Kavua is the Isser. It's not that I'm not sure whether it was a Nevela.
Right.
Because this nevela, if it is one or not, I don't know, is a kavua, and kavua is an issa d'oraisa.
Exactly.
So I have something in front of me that for sure is aser because of kavua, not because of nevela.
Well, yeah, that's the name of the issa.
That's the Ramah.
Yes.
But because he holds that the kavua itself now constitutes an additional, a new issa, regardless of whether I have a suffix if it was or not.
Yes. That's the chumrah of kavua.
Right.
Yeah, and therefore we don't really have a sfeika here. We only have one suffix, but why wouldn't one suffix be sufficient? Understand? Because apparently,
So that's what you explained last week. That the kavua introduces
it. Yeah, and it remains so apparently. Just to finish up, I have something good for you.
I thought everything knows.
Yeah, the Knesset Akdoila, in regards to the last seif of the Siman, brings down that whenever you have a taruvas, even though it may be mutter, there are some who are machmir to remove one piece.
No, but they're doing it low.
Just forget about toiling now, that we assume, like the that he fell into those. There are some that are machmir to you have a mixture, you can have it, it's bottle. There are some that are machmir to remove one piece. Yeah, there's a chum like that. You remove one piece. And what's the idea behind this one, the throwing away one piece? He says, Toiv Lasas King, he agrees. Because, hopefully, he says, Mina Shamayim, they're going to assist you, that will be the treif piece that you remove. No, Chas v'shalom, on the contrary, I told you I am convinced that this is the way it works. Remember the case with the falling into the ocean? Yeah. We make an assumption. Well, that's an assumption, but we're hoping that that's what it is. And on the contrary. And what's the proof for this? Because we have a famous klal in the Gemara, Abali taher misayein oto min hashamayim. You want to become clean, you want to become a Baal Tshuva, you will receive divine assistance.
But you would never permit it.
What do you mean you never permit it?
It's already permitted anyway, so then as a chumrah.
Right, as a chumrah.
You're adding it.
As a chumrah.
But that would be never the basis.
It's a chumrah, but he's saying that's a good thing to do.
You would never say, you can eat it because it's your hashgacha pratit, it will be already good.
No, bottle is bottle, bittul is bittul, right?
So that's what permits it.
But it's a good idea to do, he says, because hopefully they will help you in Hashemayim that you will not even have a suffix treifus enter your mouth. Because of the klal, habali tahem, saying it in Hashemayim. So this is a very important lesson also before Yom Kippur. Person who wants to come clean, a who will help him. Ashreichem Yisrael, abichem shebashamayim metaher etchem. Right? Hashem is cleaning us, Hashem is purifying us, giving us a second chance. And whoever is careful in kashrus, chas v'shalom that he should ever come into a situation where he has a suffix. In Hashemayim, they won't allow him to fall. But he has to be careful. If he himself is not careful. Tell you a quick story with this, we'll finish. During the time of the Marranos in Spain, there were two were running away from Spain. And they traveled as far, I think, as North Africa. And on their way to North Africa, I think they were in another port somewhere in southern Spain. And they each went their way to find hospitality where they can stay until they can continue. Of course, they didn't know what kind of a home they're getting into, and what could they do? They didn't want to reveal it was a time to conceal your identity. So one of them goes into his host's home. He sees crosses all over the place and said, apparently this is a real Christian home, but what can I do? I have to eat. And he ate. The other one, also similar situation, went into a home, very Christian looking, and ate. The two of them, however, had different kinds of experiences. At the end of their stay, one of the hosts went over to one of them and told him, rest assured, all that you've eaten here is 100% kosher. We're Jewish. And what you see is just a facade, to conceal our identity. Oh, Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem. He was a nichshal. The other one didn't have such luck. They didn't tell him that. He apparently ate right. So he felt bad. When they finally arrived at the destination, he went to a rabbi who ate treif. Why was my friend lucky and I wasn't so lucky? So the rabbi asked him, tell me, did you ever in your life eat something not kosher? So he starts thinking, he says, well, when I was younger, I went to a picnic with my non-Jewish friends and I was tempted and I ate some of their food, their cheese. See, the rabbi says, that's it. If you were not careful, Min HaShamayim, they would not protect you. Even if it was once, why should they make a miracle for you to make you land in the house of a Jew? Your other friend, however, was always careful. So they made sure to protect him that he should land in the home of a Jew. Everything's Min HaShamayim. A person who watches over himself, there's no doubt in the world of Min HaShamayim they're going to watch over him. So may you have an easy fast. Bezat Hashem, we'll come back together a few weeks from now.